Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 56th edition of the Frankenstein Chat. And as you can see, we've got I was going to say old friend, but well, not quite so old, but we have a good friend of ours, Paul Duckworth, is joining us this morning. Hello, Paul.
Morning, Frank. Morning, Stan.
Morning, Paul.
And Stan is somewhere down on the Isle of Anglesey, aren't you, Stan?
Yeah, just it's very sunny. I don't know what it's like where you are.
It's beautiful here.
I need to get out and in the sun soon.
Yeah. So how's the decking going on, Stan?
Oh, back-breaking work. Absolute back-breaking. We finished it. Well, we're coming back tonight, so we'll leave the second coat of one part of it till next time we come visiting.
Oh, well. Well, it's good that we're all here. I think, Stan, your signal is hanging by a thread. So
it is.
A little warning here now. It could end up with just the Paul and Frank show. But if
I become unstable again,
we will carry on. But well, gents, what a week! I mean, as if I thought we'd seen it all. I thought it couldn't get any worse. But this week, just for the record, Sir Kevan Collins, the recovery czar appointed by the government, decided to resign this week when he achieved 1/10, I think, of the funding that his plan required. And I think he'll go down in history as a brave soul and somebody who tried to do the right thing. But anyway, we're definitely going to chat about that, I think, this week. So, but before we do, Paul, what's caught your eye this week?
Yeah, well, following on from last week's episode, really, when you had Emma on from the NGA, I noticed that the NGA and the Arts Council have updated and issued a new guide for governors on arts, culture and creativity, a guide for governing boards. And I'm really passionate about the arts, so slightly different sort of tack from when I was your guest last time, where we talked about leadership. Another aspect of something I'm really passionate about is performing arts. I was a drama teacher originally, primary teacher, but drama as a specialism. And we also run a youth drama group, and there's a group of us here that, and my wife's involved in that as well. And we've done that for, it'll be 30 years next March that we've been doing this youth drama group. Paul? It's called the Mad Mob, the music and drama mob. They came up with the name 30 years ago. We keep saying, would you like to change it to like the Theatre Academy of Leyland? And going, nope, it's always been Mad Mob. It has to stay as Mad Mob. So we were a week away from performing Godspell as a show with 50 young people on March the 23rd. It should have opened last year on the first day of lockdown. So we did one dress rehearsal and then we had to pull it. And the set is still there and everything's just sat. So we've done rehearsals on Zoom all year, and we just had our last rehearsal on Friday, and we sent them off to have the summer break now. We don't meet in this second half term when hopefully the weather's nice and people can go to Wales and paint decking and things like that. So we've missed meeting them physically, and we're planning everything to be back in rehearsal in September and do the show properly in March 2022, which will be our 30th anniversary as well.
Wow.
But well, that's 2 years of rehearsals, Paul. Goodness help the person who forgets the lines after that.
It'll be nearly 3 years of rehearsals because we were supposed to do it in March 2020. We've been rehearsing since September 19. So yeah, but some of the young people who are in it are in university now, and so they, we have to do some recasting as well. But yeah, it's just how much you get from that. So just seeing some parents walking with the family in the park when we were out walking, just sort of saying, can't say thank you enough for the Zoom sessions, just staying connected. And one of our head teachers posted just recently, they're in a really good choir, and just said, one of the things that as society has opened up again, I can go out for a meal, I can go down the pub, but I can't sing with my choir, indoors, we can't rehearse. So just really, really hoping for those days very quickly. But the NGA document, back to the point, I think is really, really great that, for governing bodies to think about it in terms of strategy and vision. And what Emma was saying last week was, it's a point, isn't it, for governors and head teachers now to try. I understand how challenging that is at these times, but to try to kind of lift the head just a little bit to the horizon and to see what that vision, reconnect with that vision. and what it's all about, and that full curriculum, which I
Yeah.
know was part of what Sir Kevan Collins, who I'm so disappointed about that this week, but part of what he was talking about was, this is about the whole child. This is about providing time for art and creativity. And Russell Hobby said the same in his
I thought
update.
Russell's piece was really interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the point he also made a point about targeted resources. I thought that was a really interesting point he made in an article. I think it was in Schools Week. I read it this week, where he was saying this is, you can stretch this money, however much there is, across the whole country, and you just end up with a very stretched system, as opposed to much more targeted interventions, where, for me, we're all in the northwest here. We have been hit so badly by this pandemic and continue to be hit badly. For me, it just seems wrong that the money should be spread quite so thinly across the country. And actually, we've got, major communities in our country that have been hit so badly. That's where the money needs to go.
Yeah, but Frank, there's a sort of, I don't know, a mindset of government that in order to do things, what you have to do is provide agencies who then provide the service. And what happens is the money just gets eaten up by the agencies. I mean, this equivalent is £50 a child, isn't it?
Well, there's some debate about whether it's that much. I mean, I've also heard of £22, but I think, £50 was the first amount that was mentioned.
So if you're going to be, the most efficient way you can use it is to give it to schools and say, what's best for you and your children, get on with it. Not, we're going to hire 1,000 tutors in your area and you can book into them, but they might not turn up and the kids might not turn up. But
the thing for me though is, it goes back to the point Paul was making before. I do have a concern, because my issue of the week, what's caught my eye this week, is basically, what have schools done when the children have returned? Have they, at the point I made last week, just created a testing system to replace the national testing system that has now not happened? And actually, if this is about the whole child, about re-engaging and trying to develop everything rather than just maths and English, I would have thought there would have been a host of a broad range of activities going on, the likes of which Paul was describing.
Yeah.
But they've not happened. I'm not seeing those happening. I think there's I hate to say this because I feel as I'm going to harm. I don't want to harm anybody when I say it, but actually, there is a certain lack of understanding about what an ambitious curriculum looks like, and what a curriculum that actually tries to develop the whole child and all of their skills and talents and enables that to flourish, as a butting up against teachers who see it as a sort of testing regime. They've got to get this level, they've got to get this, and actually you do this, this will help you. But actually they're stuck with this sort of wedded nature towards testing, and they don't view assessment as a broad assessment of the child. It's assessment in very small areas of development, and that's what I think there is. I feel fortunate I came through where there were no national, in many respects it was harmful because everybody did their own thing in terms of curriculum design, but I had to spend time thinking about what is curriculum design, and what is a good education. I didn't have people telling me what that was. And now we have people being told what it is, and they then try and jump through the hoops to create it. But I think you need to take yourself right out of that and think, wow, what is a good education? And I think it's emphasizing a lot more of the stuff that you're talking about, Paul. It really does.
My worry about it, Frank, is
I'm off my hobby horse now.
It's the quality of that, of the art and the drama and the music. If and it would be great if this new push for a wider curriculum again brought in those subjects, but they've got to be quality experiences. You can't just say, we've got some extra PE time, let's do this, or we've got some extra drama time, what shall we do? It needs people to really think about the quality of what they're doing, so that it's not, doing some painting is not so divorced from doing your maths and English. It's actually the same quality level, the same expectations, but it's a different skill.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mary Myatt talks, doesn't she, in a lot of her curriculum stuff about does your curriculum produce beautiful things? Is what you present to the children beautiful? I mean, that's an all-encompassing term, but that idea of the highest quality.
Yes.
I absolutely agree with you. Before I left Lancashire, so I used to work in Lancashire local authority. I headed up a year of We Are Reading. So that was a whole year about reading for pleasure and about reading. It was a really fantastic year. But one of the things we did was we teamed up with Curious Minds, and we did a SLICE program, Specialist Leaders in Cultural Education. And so 6 schools looked at how the creative arts, and they worked with creative partners, could really reinforce and improve reading. There's some amazing things happened inside a library. So one school actually did these worked with Ludus Dance Company, and actually stripped out everything from the middle of the library and did some dance performances for their families. So families felt that library next to their school was almost like an extension of their school and a place they could go into. And young children said things like, you can make noise in a library, like you can dance and sing. And, we've had rock bands in libraries, and worked really closely with Julie Bell, the head of service for libraries in Lancashire. And we had an absolutely fantastic program all about reading, all about reading for pleasure, but also developing reading skills, some really high quality stuff in there, along with the creative aspect of it, which really do serve it. So it's not either or. I don't think it's a choice, is it? It's not.
No.
It's not do we support the arts, or do we do reading and maths and and the rounded education? Just absolutely. I'm just a firm believer that you get so much all round from that.
It goes back to what I was saying last week about experience and planning the experience in for children, not just we're going to read and we're going to improve children's reading, but part of that will be an experience in the library with dance, with drama, and that should be planned into the curriculum, so that it's not just when they learn, what they learn, but it's how they learn. What do they gain from that will make it sticky? Mick Waters used to say irresistible, didn't he? What will make learning irresistible? And we've got to. I think we need to revisit that kind of stuff. I really do.
But I'm being quite harsh here now, and I'm very sweeping. But actually, I know of children now whose cultural experience is far better outside of school than it is in school.
Yeah.
And actually that favors those who can pay for it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, we did some research some years ago when cultural capital sort of became, it's probably about 5, maybe even longer. And what we looked at was, what is the pupil's cultural capital, and how can schools develop that? And what we found was the schools that drew from better backgrounds had better opportunities to widen those cultural experiences than the schools who were saying, that's very nice, but we've got to get maths and English right because instead of coming.
That's it for me.
Widened rather than narrowed.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I spent, I think, 15 minutes on just what's caught your eye this week. But Stan, we haven't even got to yours.
No, mine is linked to all that. It's just taking the wider view on what happened this week. It's about integrity and saying, well, if you're not going to back me, why put me in this position? I'm out. And I just wondered, how many other czars ought to be thinking the same thing, or ought to have done the same thing some time ago.
Well, I'm sure we've all worked for organizations where you've thought, I want to leave. Something's going on here that I don't like. And I'm just trying to be a bit of a devil's advocate here. He must have thought, is it best to stay in the camp and try and fight my corner? But it must have been so bad. The prospect, he must have had such little confidence in being able to get the additional funding and to get it quickly that he probably thought, well, I'm off, but actually leaving it has left a real void. We've lost the figurehead, we've lost the plan maker, and actually we're now, I think, sort of looking around saying, well, what next?
What next is we'll have 100,000 tutors by this time next year.
all managed by a Dutch firm.
Yeah.
It's is it me? But I mean, I have great fondness for Professor Becky Francis at the EEF, because I think, you know, that they stepped up to try and create a tutoring structure for the country. It's been running for what, just over a year or so, you know, and I know, and I've tweeted that it's, you know, I can tell you now, Gavin Williamson was upping, you know, to this week how brilliant it was, and it was having, you know, and I know that there are many schools that it has not reached, and many children who have tried to use it and have not, and there are probably others out there that have used it. It's going really well. But for me, to give it to the EEF and then to say that actually you've done a really good job, and then not give them the contract to run it the following year through an independent charity which they were helping to set up, I'm thinking, hang on, I just don't understand that. You know, the Secretary of State has gone on television and said it's going really well. I don't believe that, but he has said that it's gone really well, and actually, and we're not going to give it to you to run it for the next year.
Just
What
a couple
the
of
hell is all
reminders,
that
Frank.
about?
He also said schools wouldn't close. He also said schools were safe in late December. So it depends how much you're going to take from.
But it's about this mixed messaging, though, isn't it? It's about, this is where you sort of, you feel as though you know, the communication of all of this has been throughout all of, you know, there's been this sort of, let's up it, make it positive, you know, everything's going well, when in fact all of us know it hasn't been. But actually just keep on going with the positive, because people not involved in education want to hear a positive story, whether it's a lie or an untruth or not quite the full truth. That doesn't matter, as long as everyone ends it feeling positive, you know. I think that's where they're at, and you know, it hasn't failed them yet.
No, surprisingly, it hasn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, we must have the least competent secretary than we've ever. I mean, I don't particularly like Jeffrey Archer, but he was on TV the other day and going through the process and saying Gavin Williamson should have been going to see the Chancellor and saying, this is what I need, and making the case and fighting his corner and being aggressive about it. And he just said he could make himself a hero by resigning now. Yeah. But it just appears that, you know, you can say all the bluster you want about education's our important thing, and this is what we want to do, and this is going to be levelling up. But unless you put the cash behind it, it's just words.
Can I ask you for your views on how the funding, whatever funding, you know, I mean, is available, not what it should be spent on, but where it should be spent in the country? Have you got a view on that?
It's not been focused, has it? So an amount per pupil that's just the same wherever, you know. So I mean, I was listening then as you spoke, and a few words sprung into my mind, which was about, you know, we just keep hearing sound bites, don't we? So there's a levelling up agenda, but actually, if you give exactly the same amount of funding everywhere, then that's not levelling anything up, is it? So, and I suppose we sound like, you know, hey, those three blokes up north again,
Northerners,
you know, it's the Northerners. But you know, it depends what you want to achieve, doesn't it? I mean, I'm a real fan of EEF. I mean, anyone who comes on any sort of training that I do, you know, like, oh, he's off again, you know, oh, look at this, and let's look at the research. And they've been quite clear about what does make the difference and what doesn't make the difference. So the other bit that's hanging around from this week is extending the school day, you know, and we'll look into that. But actually, there's been numerous EEF reports saying, in terms of the cost and the impact of doing something like that, it's really not. It doesn't get enough little stars against the high cost of it. And then for an ex-minister to go on television and say, but actually the unions are against that before we've even consulted on it, it's kind of, but the evidence is quite clear. And we have got a chartered college, again, who I'm a real fan of the chartered college teaching. And Dame Alison Peacock said quite clearly, you know, schools need the funding, and they need the funding. Trust head teachers, trust schools to decide how they need to spend that. But it's got to be enough to make a difference. And the targeted nature of that, just got to ask yourself, haven't you? £80 per head, as we had last time across all schools, is well, yeah, it just doesn't look like it's targeted. Back to what you said about Russell Hobby. I mean, he did a really good blog about 3 months ago, which had his 6 tests really for a good recovery. And one was it's long term. You know, we're not going to fix it with some tuition now and just plug those gaps. It's a long term plan. And one of it was target your funding where it's going to make the biggest difference. So look at that on a national scale. Say, well, target it where we need it targeting.
Yeah, the problem is, I think that it's political, and my honest belief, it's not about levelling up. It's about making it feel as though something's happening. And so the more words they use, the more times it's on the news. I bet if you spoke to people in the general public, that would tell you that schools are getting a load of money and we're levelling up, and that's what's happening.
I agree.
It's how the politics of it all works.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we're not seeing real results.
But
But the time system, they need, you know, as long as we don't get negative results before the next election, that's all that counts.
The issue is, though, is that we will have a massive skill shortage in, you know, because we're not valuing, the system is not valuing every child as being an important resource for the development of our country. You know, and actually, I think there's been quite a lot of talk this week about the thing, was it the Wetherspoons boss?
Oh yeah.
We're rather short of bar staff. You know, can we not have some of these Europeans that have left? Can we have them back? And actually, you know, if we've not got that, and we're only allowing particular people to come from other countries who are high skilled, we have got to get to a position where every single child in our school, regardless of where we're wanting to put them in the ability range, has got to be seen as a valuable resource. And we've got to draw out everything we can from the skills and talents that they've got. I don't feel that what the government was doing was actually addressing that. It was as if, you know, we've gone into this sort of stuff. There's a little bit around CPD in the funding. There's a commitment to tutoring. But
the CPD though, Frank, isn't that to train teachers to do the well-being stuff?
Yeah,
so actually that's to save money. That's not an investment.
Yeah. So the thing for me is, you know, the tutoring is not going to give the young people who have, I mean, I look at young people and I think, wow, they're just amazing. You know, regardless, I don't think of them as whether they've got the maths or English GCSE. I'm just having a chat with them and I think, God, you're awesome. You know, and actually I think what the government needs to get its head around is that, you know, this idea, they're concerned about, well, they've lost this in reading, they've lost this in mathematics. You know, actually, first of all, I want to know how reliable that data is before we start jumping on the bandwagon. But the second thing is, you know, well, is that we are where we are. You know, in the next few years, we're going to need, you know, people to step up, this generation to step up. We need to give them every confidence we can that they can do it. And I'm convinced that they can. It's just that we have a testing system and government obsessed with PISA tests that actually, you know, that's what they view a good education is, actually whether you've got maths and English. And when you talk to employers, that is not what they're looking for.
No, well,
they want that, they assume that's going to be there, but our system will not deliver that, because the testing system means you've got to have some kids that are going to not meet that level.
Yeah, well, Andy Hargreaves always says about PISA, it's so flawed anyway, and you're not comparing like with like, so it's just not worth basing your education system about some results in a test that's unreliable.
Yeah. Do you think, just to move this on a little bit, there's a lot of talk at the moment about infection rates in schools and the Delta variant, as they're calling it now. You know, that actually is a real risk here, that the vaccines themselves might not be strong enough to prevent infection, you know, from the latest variant. The department has not released infection rates for schools. For some reason, it's not releasing that information.
It's a scandal, that, Frank. because they've twice said they were going to release it as soon.
Can I suggest what would happen if schools had to close again?
My view is it would be a much smoother transition to online learning for the vast majority of schools and vast majority of students and pupils. There would still be the issue of children who don't have access or sufficient access to online learning, but I think schools are now, certainly the schools I visit, are so geared up, it's almost flick of a switch stuff. So I don't think it will be as disruptive. I think where people see the disruption is what it means to parents, what it means to carers and work and everything else.
Yeah.
So I think that's the driving force of keeping schools open and getting, schools remaining open, because it's the disruption it makes elsewhere, not the disruption to education.
Yeah. The government's, I mean, it's the right thing to push the vaccine. I get that, but actually, other countries have actually undertaken a lot more measures to ensure that schools are safe. And whether that's increased ventilation system, improved ventilation systems or whatever. I was speaking to a relative who's 17, goes to a sixth form college on the other side of the country. And the kids, I said, well, are you still wearing your masks? And he was saying, no, we don't wear masks. We have one teacher who tells us to wear the mask, and we wear it, but actually none of us wear it in the corridors or in most of the classes. For me, that needs to change. That sort of approach needs to be in now, and should have been rigorously enforced, from day one. But I think there's a little bit of vaccine fatigue or whatever it is. Vaccine confidence is probably overconfidence that is coming into the system at the moment.
I mean, one of the things over the last 12 months, I mean, you just continue to be so impressed with the school leaders. And I mean, the last lot, as Stan said, the flip to remote learning in January, by the time schools got that up and running, and they only had a day's notice, didn't they, in January, but by the time they'd actually got that up and running, and for some it was almost instant because they've been working on it since the previous lockdown. It's now, as you say, a really well-oiled machine. I mean, there are issues around young people. What it has shown is, especially for younger children, remote learning is really, really tricky, really hard. So, with nursery children and young children, and even the whole of primary, really, you need that personal. I mean, it emphasizes for me the fact that, teaching will never go remote. The NFER's research quite clearly said, this isn't something you can suddenly say, do we really need children in classrooms with teachers? Absolutely, we do. And there is an element there where that is really, really important. We do live in an area where we've got a couple of really big hotspots, don't we, in terms of numbers at the moment. I have to say that directors of public health, I think, in our area have been incredible. And, I barely knew Sackby when I worked in Lancashire. We had a little bit of a link because we were both involved in early years, and that involved health and education. But I think he's been incredible. And also the other bit that I'd just make a call for at this point is local radio. So I think BBC Radio Lancashire has been incredible for that in terms of really unpicking the stories at a local level and not being. Sometimes when you watch national news stories, you think, that's a strange angle to take. What's that all about? But actually the local news, talking to people. I
found the local news much more punchy.
Yeah.
Also more questioning, more challenging. As if some of the national, because the national is so visible, it has to be more careful. Whereas I think locally, there's a little bit more robustness and a little bit more say as it is sort of thing. So no, I agree with you, Paul. I agree with you. Okay, well, believe it or not, that's 30 odd minutes, nearly 30 minutes. I know. Paul, you're one of the few guests that's been back here on a return journey.
Thank you very much. It took 50 weeks. I was number 6. Now I'm number 56. But see you after the show. I'll see you in 2020 something.
We're waiting for those tickets for that concert whenever it's on, Paul. So
You're on. You're on.
Yeah, as Stan said, we would be the two Muppets up in the
Yeah, if you can make that, that top bench.
Oh, little balcony. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you very much for joining us, Paul, and thank you, Stan. And the signal held up really well, so
Yeah.
Enjoy sitting on the decking in the sun today.
Yeah, with a bit of luck, it's clouding over now.
Okay, well, I'll stop the recording, and hopefully we'll see everybody next week.
Cheers.